Hello, bot fans, and welcome to another edition of Red Square, Blue Square, your go-to for BattleBots recap and reaction. I'm your host, as always, Richard Tiemann, and this is episode number 8, I believe. I don't know. We took a week off for yet another vacation. I got to go and actually walk for my graduation from Full Sail, and then we spent a little time on the beach. So much needed, but we're back. We're going to recap the last 2 fight cards and talk all about the big tournament reveal. So whatever episode it is, it's the next one of Red Square, Blue Square. 2 amazing guests for you. But before we get too far into it, our head referee, John Remar, needs to hit you with a warning. John?
Warning, this episode is full of spoilers, so you've been warned.
Perfect. All right, you've been warned. Spoilers all over the place, including the big tournament reveal. So without further ado, let's get to my special guest in the Red Square. You love him. He's a fan favorite. He's the adorable, the incomparable, the incorrigible, all those things. Bulls. He is the captain of Rusty, David Eaton. Welcome, David. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, Richard. How are you?
I'm doing well. Liking the new do, sir. I think, it'll take some getting used to. I like the shaggier look, but you've been an ever evolving captain and bot. So it's just the next evolution of Rusty and David Eaton.
Mm-hmm. Yep, summer's coming. You know, it'll be here any minute now. I mean, we've had a few 60-degree days, so it's practically summer in Wisconsin. So, took a little off the top, keep it cool.
All right. Well, in the Blue Square, and let's just take a moment to celebrate that this is almost 2 seasons of RSBS in the making. We finally got him. The one who is the white whale to my Ahab, the Randy Savage to my Hulk Hogan. He is Martin Mason of Mad Catter. Welcome, Martin. How are you?
How you doing, Richard? I'll tell you what, we're pumped. We're ready. This is going to be amazing. I'll tell you what, this is going to be the best episode you've ever done. And I'm going to tell you why. Because you've got the best guest you've ever seen.
Yes. Okay. That is exactly what we needed. I don't know if he can hold that for 30 minutes, but that is how we are starting this episode off. Thank you guys so much. Welcome. It is going to be a lot of fun to talk really just everything that's gone on over the last episode, because there was so much in it. It was a fight card and then the tournament bracket reveal, and there's already been some controversy, and it's been less than 24 hours. So, I mean, what else do you expect? So before we do that, though, let's go ahead and throw up the fight card from 2 episodes ago and go down that real quickly here. We saw Cobalt knock out Gruff, Riptide knock out Duck, Valkyrie knocked out Pardon My French, Blip got a unanimous decision over Lockjaw, finishing their qualifiers at 3-0. Then we had Minotaur knock out Deep Six. Not an easy task, but they found a way. Hijinks knocked out Sub-Zero, and your main event, Yeti, wins by split decision over Scorpios. And so now, last night's fight card, let's go ahead and throw that one up there before we get to the big tournament bracket reveal. And we had Bloodsport over Claw Viper by unanimous decision. So it went the distance. Good for Bloodsport. They finish 2-1. Then our own Martin Mason and Mad Catter, they get a convincing win via knockout over Rampage. Congratulations on finishing your impressive 3-fight qualifiers at 2-1. Then Huge knocked out Switchback. Very impressive. That's the second impressive fight in a row by Jonathan Schultz's crew. They finished 2-1. Then Kraken unfortunately lost to Glitch, but Glitch, surprisingly, 3-0 is how they will finish their qualifiers, with a knockout over the mighty Kraken. You don't see that too often. Then we had Lucky knock out Mammoth. Wow. Again, another one that you don't see too often, but Lucky proving to be more skill than actual luck in the battle box. They finished 2-1. Then we had Witch Doctor knock out our poor Rusty. And David, I'm sorry about that. We were really pulling for you. What was it like to finish the regular season, as it were, against a bot like Witch Doctor?
Explosive. Going into the Witch Doctor fight, I don't go in. It's funny because people are like, oh, you got to know you're going to lose. And it's like, that's not how I approach any fight. I go into every fight to win. And I had a plan to go in against Witch Doctor. I mean, I'll be honest, I was a little shocked when they were like, you're going to fight Witch Doctor for your second fight. After Blip, I was like, oh, Blip was obviously Blip works. After having a rough bout with Blip, they're like, all right, we're going to step it up another notch, Witch Doctor. And I was like, all right, but I was ready for it. But like I said, when I got into it, I went in with a game plan to win, and the game plan didn't quite come together, but is what it is, you know?
It happens, but you're a true sport. You're a true competitor. And even though you will not be in the tournament, the fans still love you. Everybody still loves you. I mean, we're all huge fans of Rusty, so much so that fans are making homemade knitted dolls that people that aren't fans normally want to buy, but you have a toy now. So clearly the sky's the limit for David Eaton and Rusty. So congratulations on another great season for you. And then finally, the main event, this one, I didn't really see as a main event. Like, there were so many other matches out there, and I'm not saying Scorpios needed to be in another main event fight, but obviously there were a lot of other fights that I thought maybe could have been done, especially with that log jam at 1-1 and then 2-1 for a lot of teams. But we had Ice Wave take on Fusion, and Ice Wave gets that win by knockout. So both the Ewert brothers finish at 1-2. How would that play out with the tournament seeding? And then Ice Wave, the veteran, gets 2-1. So let's go ahead and take this fight card, you know, for the points worth talking about, which obviously, Martin, this was a big win for you guys. You were going in 1-1, but had one of the tougher schedules. Did you feel you needed to win this one in order to get into the tournament?
Battlebots is all about adaptation, change. Actually, we were originally scheduled to fight Smee, and Joe was having a lot of problems, and we worked with Joe for, gosh, hours trying to get Smee together for the fight. We gave him a speed controller, we gave him some motors. Two of my guys were putting his bot together. I was trying to we were just trying to get him back in the field. And then kind of about maybe 2 hours before, it was just clear that wasn't going to happen. And as you know, he didn't get all of his fights. So Rampage was able to jump in there. Those guys are, you know, talk about just fantastic folks that are always ready to go. And you know, I don't know if you know that family at all, but they are just amazing people. So, you know, when Smee couldn't do it, they just jumped in and you know, got to the field and made it happen. And just, you know, then, so just, again, we're all friends. That's part of the problem, right? And you know, you get into the arena, the gloves are off, and then afterwards, you know, we were trying to get Rampage back together again after the fight for what was next. So,
well, that's the beauty of BattleBots, and the way that it's put together with the tapings is the ability to adapt and overcome. And I'm certainly glad that you guys were able to have an opponent for your third and final fight. As we found out, not every team had a third and final fight. In fact, if you looked at the list of undefeated robots going into these last two episodes, there were 12 or I think 13 maybe, and there were 2 in the 3-0 category that had just improved there, and that was Endgame, the reigning champion, and Ribbot, who has had an amazing season to say the very least. But then with the episode 2 prior, Blip put itself into the 3-0 group, and then with this last episode, Glitch actually put itself in the 3-0. And then all the bots that were 2-0 just kind of stayed that way because not a lot of them got a third fight, which, you know, it's a little disappointing to me as a fan because, one, I want to see more fights. And, you know, we went from 4 to 3, and then for some now, just the 2. But also, you got to worry about sponsors and making sure that these teams are getting their money's worth for the people that paid to make it possible for them to go to the competition. So, David, I know that for you, it's really a thing of passion where the tournament, whatever, if you get in, amazing. If not, you're just happy to be down there and compete. But like, were you concerned if you were going to get, you know, all 3 fights for yourself? And how did you feel about the teams that did not get that third fight?
So the way I kind of look at it is if I go there as a team, if I'm ready to go, I expect, you know, we're all going to get an equivalent number of fights, an equivalent number of opportunities. I understand for the production side of it that not everybody is always ready to go. And there is a lot of sometimes scrambling and moving around trying to get things to fit. So because you're on a schedule, you have a limited amount of time to shoot the fights. You don't have run the fights. So like with me, for example, this year in general, and I've spoken a little bit on about my pages, I was really dedicated 100% into getting my new robot up and running and out there fighting. What was hurting me this year was I had parts from sponsors, I had parts that were held up in harbor and weren't shipping and things like that, that just ultimately crippled the new robot. I mean, hindsight's 2020. Had I known now what if I knew now what was going to happen, I would have ran the old robot and dedicated to focusing and running the old Rusty. Because that didn't happen, that's personally why I didn't end up having a third fight. Was I kind of came into the brackets in the tournament late, when I decided that, hey, we're going to run the old robot and make a run at it with the old Rusty. Now, that being said, personally, I understood why I didn't have a third fight. Wasn't upset about it. If anything, I was disappointed in myself that I didn't get the new robot out, and that subsequently I didn't spend more time preparing the old robot. But it is what it is. Sometimes you have bad years. For teams, if you weren't ready and you weren't prepared to go, or if you were prepared to go, if you were prepared to go and you didn't get that third fight, that can be critical for them because it can affect, how they look going into the round of 32, because obviously some 1 and 2 teams did get in. So a team that was, 0 and 2 might have been looking for that third win and their opportunity to get in, and they lost it. And like you said, they lose that potential airtime that helps them in the following year with their sponsors and getting more sponsors if they need them. So, it is what it is. You do what you can with the season. And like I said, it's a battle that production also plays. So I guess the way I put it is I'm understanding of kind of the situation in all sides.
Which, as I understood it, there was a lot that was happening at this particular taping, be it the static electricity where your guys' pits were, or just, a constant wondering of what was going to happen one day to the next with COVID and safety precautions and things like that. But, you move the venue to a new city, it's a new environment. There's a lot of uncertainty and things that you kind of have to feel out. I know when I've traveled to places to cover events, I always try to get there either a day before or early just to kind of get a lay of the land and feel everything out. And you guys don't really have that. You show up, maybe a day early before the taping start, you unload and then you're off to the races. So it's some growing pains. And I think that's what a lot of fans need to understand. But yeah, was really looking forward to that third fight from a lot of bots. And I think that could have helped clear up some things as far as seeding and just who was in the tournament, which we'll get to in just a second. But of all the bots, I'd say that, looking at just these last 2 fight cards, Glitch finished undefeated and so did Blip. And Blip isn't really a true rookie bot. Like, it's a new bot, but Aaron Hill is just doing wonders. He's a fantastic captain and builder. But you look at them, and then also as far as the 2-1 teams, Martin Mad Catter had a phenomenal season. But as far as ones that you may not have expected to, I know that Huge is a fan favorite, but that doesn't always mean you're going to have more wins than losses. They had a really great season, especially the way that their last 2 fights went. And then I think Lucky, and then Minotaur, obviously, but Valkyrie and Yeti really had great 2-1 campaigns this season. So those were ones that I felt confident about being in. And then Scorpios 1 and 2, but how tough was their schedule? Are they going to get in or not? We'll see. So was there a bot that stood out to you, Martin, that really impressed you this season despite its record?
Well, I think I do want to talk a little bit about Glitch. Just the backstory on Glitch. I don't know how much you've talked about it already. Kyle was Kyle is a freshman in college, and he was in our NTMA, our local NRL league, and they won the league kind of right before COVID stalled everything. And then the driver Moody is one of my former students. So one of the things you see in BattleBots is there is a lot of continuity, right? So I got to see Glitch kind of go from CAD to reality, and Moody was messaging me on this Discord thing pretty often, and I've even got a video I'm supposed to be watching about the new Glitch. So it was really neat to see them get that bot together, and then at the event, just Glitch was a multi-team effort, right? You saw a picture of Chuck working on it. One of my guys, Ryan, spent at least 20 hours getting their electronics working. It's got a bunch of parts from a lot of different robots in it, and it's just kind of their 3-0 season is sort of jackpot-esque magic, right? And every one of their fights, you watched it, and they were so fun to watch because you were how is this thing winning? I don't know, but it just kept doing it. So And so just Kyle and Moody put so much into getting into the arena every single time. So that even though they had a perfect season, every single fight and just getting into the fight, right? They would get in there, and if you were to look at what's under the covers, you just, it wasn't pretty. And that they got in there every time, they won their fights, and it's going to be exciting to see what they do in the round of 32.
Yeah, very impressive. At 3-0, they got to be in there. You got to think top 10 seed. Same with Blip, despite the unknown. And I really don't put much into the strength of schedule. We've said it several times on the show in previous episodes. You guys fight the bots they put in front of you. I mean, David, I doubt you were wanting to be Witch Doctor's sacrificial lamb out there for their third and final fight.
Well, again, it goes into, like Martin had said, sometimes it comes down to they say, Witch Doctor's ready to go. They need their third fight. Who's ready to go? Rusty happened to be ready to go, and they're like, "Hey, why not Rusty?" And I was like, "Hey, why not me?" I'm not going to say no. I'll take anybody. Actually, I'd take any fight anytime. And like I said, I don't shy down from any of the fights. I'm there to fight robots, right? That's the whole point. And I love having big name contenders, and I love fighting Witch Doctor. At the end of the day, too, with fights like Blip, people are like, "Well, you had Blip fighting Rusty," and I said, "Well, you got to look at." From their side, they were expecting to fight the new Rusty with the new Blip. You know what I'm saying? So when that matchup came together and then new Rusty didn't happen, well, then old Rusty went in and took his place. And I ran his performance issues like that. But whatever it happens to be, right?
I feel like, Martin, you're one of those people that because of the character that you are on BattleBots, that you're like that Spanish teacher in high school that if they get upset or aggravated, that they'll start ranting or chewing their class out in English, and then it quickly turns into Spanish, where with you it would be you start out as Martin and then you turn into the Martin Mason and it just goes off on that.
So Richard, you mentioned strength of schedule, and I think it actually really does matter. I'll take two extremes, right? Donald with Lockjaw, incredibly tough schedule, 0-3. And Ribbot, incredibly, I don't know what to say. So here we have two robots that could have been in completely opposite situations if they'd had each other's schedules. Right. And and that's real, and that's something the show does. And I think part of it is Donald is an incredible competitor, and there's and Ribbot, well, we beat him the previous season. They're nice guys. Actually, we're good friends with them, but they had a snowflake of a schedule going through, and there's some reasons for that. Right. So the strength of schedule really does matter. And you look at Scorpio Shetty, there's these things where you'd really like them to put the 1-1 bots up against each other so you can see who ends up 2-1, right? You really. And I give Aaron a lot of credit putting the fights together most of the time, right? Sometimes there's externalities, and sometimes it's Rusty was ready and Rusty needed a fight, right? I mean, sometimes it's that, and sometimes they get a big surprise, right? They were not expecting us to beat Fusion last season, so it is real. It's real combat. Everybody's out there. This is not wrestling, folks. Right. Oh. So anything can happen ultimately. But sometimes people get a softy schedule, and sometimes people get a brutal schedule.
Yeah, and it is what it is. And to your point, like with Donald, by his third fight, you could see, and you don't always see behind the scenes, but he's fighting in every one of his fights. You talked about all the damage to Bad Catter. You have all this damage, and it's brutal, and they're scrambling to get the robot back up to 100%. And he had one brutal fight after another brutal fight after another brutal fight by the time he got down to Blip. So just a really tough season for him. So then again, like you said, how do you you have to weigh their strength of schedule because it's huge. It makes such a big difference. It really does.
It was tough watching Don Hudson go 0-3, like it really was. Just like it was tough to watch, Ray Billings and Tombstone go 0-1 to start the season, because we've seen that before. And it always, you know, as the fans, like, you want to see these bots that you know and love come out and kick ass immediately. But then also there's the next generation every season. There's the new faces that we're getting more and more familiar with. They're really making a name for themselves. And so now that's must see fighting, and those are main event fights as well. So it really does depend on the season, because yeah, there are fights, like I know I mentioned in a tweet that I thought, you know, with Mammoth and then Lucky, that Kenny himself and I agreed that it should have been advantage Mammoth, because how is Lucky supposed to push and flip this thing? And then they go in there and they win by knockout. So my point about the strength of schedule is you never know what's going to happen in that battle box. So a bot that could have been most destructive last year, like Valkyrie, could be not as destructive this year, or maybe they're getting tougher opponents or whatever it is. But a win against them in 2021 may not have the same value as a win against them in 2020. So to your point, Martin, I completely understand. Yeah, it does matter. I just think that there's so many factors that go into what is considered a strength of schedule or opponent. And with that being said, the main event, like I said, this one caught me off guard. There weren't bots that I felt, you know, there's no history there really. I mean, yeah, we love seeing Fusion and a member of the Ewert family, and then Ice Wave's a veteran. But, you know, there was another fight I had in mind where you're thinking, okay, so what bot out there is 2-0 that really needs a good, you know, third and final fight? Or maybe what bot out there is 1-1 that could use a measuring stick of a fight? Maybe Jason and Maddie Vasquez and their two bots, because I feel like that could have been easy for a main event setup, brother versus brother, both needing that third fight to see just how they measure up. But, you know, we'll see how the tournament plays out. So let's go ahead and get into the big bracket reveal, starting with quadrant number 4, as they called it, which interesting name. The number 4 seed, Sawblaze, which I agree with and disagree with all at the same time. They had one loss, but it's to the reigning champion. So you really, I mean, considering how it happened, which that's one of those variables and factors that play in, they are one of the best bots in the field. So 4 is probably right about where you would want to put them. They will face Hijinks at 28. Then we have Hypershock at 13. That one was a bit of a head scratcher, considering they were one of a handful of 2-0 bots that did not get that third fight. They will take on P1 at 20. Then Uppercut is number 5. They again finished 2-0. They will take on Huge at 28, which just seems criminal. Huge was 2-1. Their last 2 fights were amazing. And that one is a bit of a tougher seeding for me to swallow. And I'll get your guys' opinions as we go quadrant to quadrant. And then finally, Shatter at 12 against Rip Force, or Bite Tide. I'm sorry, Rip Tide. They are mini Bite Force. They're Bite Force 2.0, just with a different paint job. So there's the 4 seed and how that quadrant plays out. As I said, Huge seemed like a huge surprise to me. Martin, your initial thoughts on this chunk of the bracket?
You know, I think Hypershock should have been much higher. Just looking at how Will's doing this season, that bot, you know, and Hypershock is either really, really good or really, really bad. And the good bot showed up this year. Go figure. And we saw that in those fights. And you know, so that one's a little surprising. You know, I don't think Huge being seated where there is you know, they need to be in the top 30. They need to be in the field of 32. It's really once you get in, it's up to you to kind of push your way through. I don't think Uppercut's a bad fight for them. And you know, it would have been criminal for them to not get in. Let's say that, right? So I'm not seeing any real arguments. It's really just do the teams that should get in, and I think everybody you listed deserves to be there.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. The fights that really look a lot of fun is going to be Uppercut versus Huge. Did the committee get it right or wrong with where they put Huge? Uppercut, though, man, that's another one of those bots that's, when it's working well, it's almost unbeatable. But obviously, they would have hoisted a giant nut or two by now if they were truly an unbeatable bot. You can say that for a lot of bots in the field, because they look going in like, who can beat this? And then they end up not being the last bot standing. And you're like, how did that happen? I mean, it just takes one fight, and that's the beauty of Battlebots. So, David, let's move on to quadrant number 3 and the 3 seed. Whiplash. Big surprise if you were wondering where their third and final fight was, but not a surprise because they're Whiplash, and obviously they have that history. Their schedule was really good, and of course it's Matty Vasquez, and he can just drive the hell out of that battle box. So at number 3, he will take on Ice Wave, who basically wrapped up the end of the regular season and the qualifiers. Then Cobalt at 14. Yeah, okay. Out of 32, yeah, they're probably right in the middle there, but they had a strong last 2 fights. They'll take on Yeti at 19, which that is another one I felt like was criminal. The Yeti almost that top 10 maybe, and then Rotator at 6. They will take on Captain Shredderator at 27, and Tantrum at 11. Good for them, and they will take on Gigabyte at 22. David, what stands out to you in quadrant number 3?
You know, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with Yeti. I probably would have placed him a little high just because the driving has been on par. The robot's been tough. You know, I think when you look at the whole package of all these robots, and we talk about strength and schedule, you know, we talk about lethality. Like, you know, you look at Cobalt, you look at some of their fights, but, you know, you look at Cobalt's weapon. When is their weapon not functioning? When is their weapon not hitting hard? And I think that affects their rankings in looking at their fights. Kind of same thing with Yeti. Every one of Yeti's fights, you know, they tend to turn into these big, heavy brawls. And when they fought, you know, Scorpios is no slouch. I mean, Scorpios is a tank of a bot, and they went and really, if you looked at the damage after the fight, Yeti took a lot of hits from Scorpios, and Scorpios was hitting hard. So, I mean, I might have moved Yeti a little bit higher. It gets tough because you can get to a point where you're like, you know, you're looking at like the minute details of who hits harder, you know, what failed on the robot, you know, how reliable was the robot, what was their strength of schedule. I don't think this bracket, this particular bracket was terribly off the mark. You know, to Martin's point, they all deserve to be where they, you know, roughly where they are. It is pretty close, and that they did make it into the top 32. It'll be interesting going forward to see. Gosh, I got the bracket up here. My eyesight's getting terrible. Or is it just late? Oh my God, one of the two.
Well, David's looking. You know, I think this is where the 2 fight thing is really making it a little more muddled, right? Because you look at there's a lot of bots that are 2-1 that are getting ranked below bots that are 2-0, and you kind of don't know what would have happened in that last fight. And so that you know, does Matt deserve to be in the top ranks? Absolutely. But what would have happened in that third fight? We don't know, and that probably would have changed the rankings. So, you know, you're seeing the teams that did get their 3 fights go 2-1, getting knocked way down compared to those teams that get 2-0. That muddles thing, but eventually, did they pick the right robots? I think they did so far.
Yeah, and you're right, and it is very much so rock, paper, scissors. And what if that third fight was their Achilles heel? You don't know. You know, that's always another point. And war of attrition. What if by that third fight, damages they had taken from the first, like Donald Hudson, had made a bad outcome for their third fight? So having those 3 fights is a major factor.
I agree. And yeah, the third quadrant, I think, is where there's going to be the most controversy, just because that's more of the middle of the pack, if you will. Those are more of the bots that you were probably on the bubble about, and like, okay, they were good, but how good were they? You know, that one loss, was it to a big deal opponent or not? So that's where that kind of gets muddled up, like you said, Martin. So we will see how that one plays out. I think most exciting matchups, obviously, are going to be Cobalt and Yeti. I mean, wow. Can we have that be a main event? Because that's a dream matchup for sure. Let's go on to number 2. Martin, you're going to love this one, because now we're going to talk about Mad Catter. But first, the number 2 seed is the undefeated Ribbot, one of only 4 3-0 teams. They will take on, and this is a new feature this year, which I love. I think it's a few seasons overdue, and it should probably happen an episode before the actual tournament starts. But this is a win and you're in fight between last year's number 1 seed Hydra and the one who I thought should be taking on Matty Vasquez and Whiplash for that third and final fight, Defender. So this is going to be interesting to see a fight like that, because your reward is to fight against Ribbot, who has had a great season. But Martin, you weren't so convinced about their schedule, so we'll see.
I'd be putting them down way lower than that. I mean, look, where did Glitch end up? They have the same schedule, and I honestly think Glitch had a tougher schedule than they did. So, you know, realistically, now again, was Ribbot convincing last season? Yes. I mean, they lost to us, but other than that, they did great. So looking at in terms of history, Ribbot has a little bit more than that, but I would put them in the middle of the pack. I think that this is way overranked. We'll see how they do in the field of 32. But again, they're going to get, they may end up with Hydra. Fantastic bot. They may end up fighting Jason. Again, Jason's an amazing driver. I fought his fairy weight version of that robot at least a dozen times. So they're going to, it's not a gimme.
And as far as their record goes, as I mentioned, there were 4 teams that finished 3-0. There are 4 top seeds. Now, if you're asking me, a person who loves all things sports and combat and, competitions, things like that, I said all season long that if you want to call this thing fair, then have it be strictly their schedule. If there's 8 teams that finish undefeated and you have 8 top seeds, then there you go. You can't really argue that. But when you have the 4th seed be a 2-1 bot, now you're throwing that out the window. And then number 3, yes, they were undefeated, but only 2 fights instead of 3. And then you have Ribbot be the number 2 seed, but yet there's 4 3-0 bots, and I don't see them being better really than the other 3. One being, of course, Endgame, who hopefully got the 1 overall seed. But yeah, there's just a lot of stuff that was really unclear to me as I'm watching quadrant number 2 be revealed. And yeah, they were 3-0, but Martin, I think you're onto something with they should have been more toward the middle of the pack. You guys, Mad Catter at 15, you will take on Black Dragon. And that sounds like a very exciting fight. How did you feel when that was revealed to you guys?
We haven't fought these guys since maybe 2017 when I think we fought their lightweight at Robo Games, and I think we won that fight. I don't remember, but I just remember it being brutal. Those guys always bring a killer robot, and they're such nice guys. So I think it's going to be carnage. It's going to be good no matter how it turns out. I know we're going to have a lot of work to do afterwards. There's going to be that.
Yeah, very excited for you guys in that fight. That should be an instant classic, as it'll be the first time that we see it in BattleBots. So it doesn't matter about that last fight whether you remember it or not. This is BattleBots, and you guys are 0-0 going into this tournament against each other. So that should be a lot of fun. Blip got the number 7 seed. They will take on Valkyrie, who is number 26, and then Jackpot is the 10th seed as far as if you're keeping track of a top 10 seeding. They get that 10th seed, and they will take on Tombstone at 23. Another great matchup that fans are already talking about the potential for this one to either be fantastic or a complete flop. It really depends on which version of each bot shows up. But my biggest problem is Blip at 7. Again, a 3-0 bot, rookie bot, yes, but I don't like putting any 2-0 bot. Like if you want to put Jameson Ghost Sawblaze at 2-1, they still had 3 fights in their Sawblaze and they had a fantastic season, a very tough schedule. That I can deal with, but putting them behind several 2-0 bots, that one just didn't sit well with me because I thought Blip, for all things considered, really went out and impressed a lot of people as a first go around for Aaron Hill's new vision of a bot. David, what did you think of Quadrant 2 and what stood out to you?
Well, what's tough for me, and I think this goes back to the strength of schedule thing, like with Blip. So I don't want to down talk me, but Rusty is kind of Blip's dream or any flipper's dream, because I didn't have any time to put any kind of floating forks on the front end. So there was no ground. I was built to drive on top of Blip. So realistically, it was a flipping fiesta for him his first fight. I didn't build any special type of try to count like with Witch Doctor. I had tried to build like a counter, a lifter for him, a wedge. I didn't have any of that for Blip. So Blip and Rust, like I said, I had just dusted Rusty off and he wasn't in tip-top shape. So I wouldn't consider that like a real dominant victory for him, right? Good testing grounds though. Beyond that, it's kind of the same thing with Blip, the strength of schedule. Even by the time he got to Donald, if Lockjaw was at 100%, how would that fight have gone? Had Blip gone through the ringer, like had Blip fought Tombstone, and then even Orby Blade, they hit like a truck. Had they gone through a couple of fights with some robots that they were gonna get hit hard by, how would their third fight have gone? So I think for Blip, I mean, I probably still would have listed them high. They would have been somewhere. I would have put them in the 9-10 ballpark. That being said, they're going to be getting some testing, obviously, because Valkyrie's an undercutter. And then beyond that, they're either going to face Jackpot or Tombstone. So their bracket's tough down there for the bottom. But then also at the top of the bracket, there's all heavy hitters in this whole bracket. And that's another thing that's kind of interesting is when you look at this being broken up into quadrants, some of the brackets definitely hit harder than the other ones, So, yeah, he's top. He's 7th seed, but he might be in one of the toughest brackets,
No, I think you brought up, we've got Tombstone, we've got Valkyrie, and, we can't ignore the changes to the arena this year and what that's done to all the horizontals and just how the arena has gotten, I'd call it constipated. You just can't move things that need to move in there. And it's really frustrating to watch those bots, watch Tombstone, watch Valkyrie, just, they're fighting the arena as much as their opponent. And that is, and that means the 2021 Tombstone Valkyrie they're not doing what they were doing in 2020. And it's not them, it's the rules changed, right? And that's incredibly frustrating to watch. I found watching their fights just really made me really frustrated.
Look at like Ice Wave, you watch their fights and it's like, man, their bar's so big, by the time they spin up and hit somebody, they're against a wall or they're in a corner. Now they've got to drive halfway across the universe to get somewhere where they can spin up. It's tough for horizontals because of that shelf, for sure. You hit the nail on the head there.
It was a very interesting addition to it, especially the timing. I understand a lot of teams not too happy with the kind of last minute reveal of like, oh, and there's this, and then you pull the cloth off the table and it's the upper deck or the shelf of shame or the huge victory platform or the how did you put it, Martin?
It's the oh no plateau.
The oh no plateau. Well, to your point, David, as far as the different quadrants and some being stacked with heavy hitters, I believe that is quadrant number 1, which, as we all could have guessed, at 3-0, completing all 3 qualifying fights, reigning champion Endgame claims the number 1 seed. So they will have what is considered the easiest path back to defending their giant nut, but it will not be easy because they will face the winner of the second win in your end fights, which will be Scorpios, legend in the making, against Malice, who had a great season last year, not the best of seasons this year, obviously, both with a chance to prove that their records are not a reflection of the success of their bot. And so then they'll get the treat. Winner gets to take on the reigning champion. How about that?
Right.
Then you have 16 Minotaur. I feel like this was, I mean, it's towards the middle, yes, but man, Minotaur is just, I think that first fight was a fluke, really, but very tough opponent. I mean, wow, that was the measuring stick for the season. Holy crap. And then they go and they rattle off back-to-back wins in convincing Daniel Freitas fashion, which we all love to see, a happy Daniel Freitas. They will take on 17 Bloodsport, which we all saw make a deep run into the tournament last year. Then number 5, Copperhead. Pretty good seeding, I would say. Copperhead, Vicious Bot. They will take on 25 Lucky. And then you have Glitch at number 9. So rounding out the rest of the top 10 is the undefeated Glitch. They will take on number 24 Witch Doctor. So really the odd duck out is Lucky, considering the rest of that portion of the tournament. I got to say, though, I mean, Minotaur, Bloodsport, if we get Endgame and Scorpios, that'll be great. But also Malice, that should be fun. Glitch and Witch Doctor. I mean, that'll be a true test for Glitch also, just how good they are. But here's the issue I have is that Scorpios is getting a 4th fight before they get to the tournament, where there was other teams that didn't even get a 3rd. So it just... that's the part that's toughest for me. If I was in charge of the tournament and I had to deal with what was already there, and it's like, okay, if you can change one thing, what would it be? I would say put Scorpios in place of Captain Shredderator, who I really didn't feel had that impressive of a qualifying season. And then you have your win to get ins between Fusion and Hydra, a match we've all wanted to see, brother versus brother. And then you can have Malice take on a number of 1 and 2 bots that maybe the committee was really on the fence about, Mammoth being one, and there were several others. But I mean, that would have been the one thing that I would have changed. Martin, how do you feel about quadrant number 1 and anything you would change overall to the bracket?
You know, I Endgame delivered a just very business-like set of wins, and just, you know, those guys are really dialed in. So, you know, they're just seems like a complete shoe-in at the number 1 seed. You know, I think Glitch, it makes sense, Glitch being where it is. It's just, you know, the whole 3-0 argument, Glitch's strength of schedule was not where some of the 2-1 bots are. You know, we've talked about Sawblaze. Sawblaze had 3 incredibly tough fights, and I think it has to be said, they lost to Endgame, and the way they lost, I think there's something that may get lost. We were told at a driver's meeting that you would be disqualified if you knock someone out in that area. Endgame did that first, and that was the first time it happened at the event, and Endgame did it to Sawblaze, and the fight lasted how many seconds, right? I think I've got that right. And we everybody was in the pitch just like, well, I guess Endgame's gonna get DQ'd. Well, we'll rewrite the rules now, won't we? But not to take away, I think it was a stupid rule, you know, and I think the problem with the rule is it made JMO change how he was doing the match. And, you know, so there's, you know, you make a rule, you enforce it, even though, anyway, so that was a big mess back in the pits, and a lot of unhappy builders and a lot of angst associated with that. But, you know, Endgame is incredibly dominant. I'm taking pictures of their bot every single season, because that's, you know, they are pushing the envelope all the time. I agree. I love your suggestion, Richard. Why aren't you picking the fights? Let's put you on the committee. You know, I think what you do, that sounds way more fun than what happened.
Hey, I'm all for it. I've said that I would be more than happy to be a guest judge, because a lot of people sometimes feel that the judges need to have a bit of a shuffle there, so it's not the same 3 every season that are seeing the same teams over and over again. That, you know, well, last year they were so good, and I know that this year that this fight wasn't really theirs, but still, I mean, they're so good. So damage points to that. I think there needs to be some type of real-time scoring, not the 3 categories, but let's say each judge has a red controller and a blue controller, and throughout the entire fight, however long it lasts, they're just clicking for the different hits that each bot delivers, and then at the end of the fight they can evaluate that, because there's been team captains and people that have said there's a lot that goes into how the fight ends, especially if it goes the distance. And to the judges, you could come out swinging in a fight, which we've seen several times, but how did it end? And even Kenny Florian has touched on, if your primary weapon goes out, how much does that ding you on the scorecard? Well, you know, I don't feel like it should come down to that. So if you have some kind of real-time scoring, that could alleviate a lot of the split decisions, and just, you know, well, they were aggressive and they controlled a lot, but their damage, it just wasn't there. There's a few things to modify, but I'm happy to lend any suggestions to the committee. They have my contact information. I'm always available. But
well, let me address that a little bit, Richard. I mean, first of all, there's 2 things. There's the judges and there's the referees. And I am so thankful that we have former competitors as judges. This is actually, I've been doing this a long time, since ABC season 2. And, you know, you go back to comedy, just, we've got Jason, and everybody is a former competitor. They've all done it, and I think we're getting the best judging we've ever had. Is it perfect? No, but it is way better than bring in some guy from you know, a TV show, or who licks a PlayStation Portable, whatever. That's, you know, that's nonsense. We've at least got competitors now. But what I do want to say is the referees. And I love John, I love them as people, but to make this more like a sport, we need referees that come out of a sporting competition environment. When we filmed in China, despite all the problems, when we did TIFR and we did KOB, our referees came out of MMA or karate. They came out of and they took their role really seriously. There are rules and you know and they are followed, they are enforced, and it was very consistent. And again, I think to elevate the professionalism, we need referees that aren't part of the show, that are actual professional referees that come out of a sporting environment. And I think that's by far the bigger problem than the judging. There's a lot of stuff behind the scenes where the refs are telling us to do something or not do something, and that's fight. And you don't see that on TV, but it is fight. It impacts the fights. It impacts how things are scored. You know, if we want to take this seriously as a sport, the referees need to come out of a professional sports background.
Right. And you're touching on that. A big thing I hear a lot of people talking about is crab walking. At what point is, you know, we've seen a lot of it where there's fights where robots have essentially crab walked the whole fight, right? And it's at what point do you call the fight as a referee and say that robot has been waddling in circles for the last, 2 minutes, or that robot is translating? Because some of the teams have said, like, hey, they immediately started a countdown, or they didn't start a countdown, or, the fight kept going on. Maybe you want the fight to stop, who knows? But, that's something else too, where a fight could keep going on and the robot's been crab walking, and then the other robot, let's say towards the end, is damaged or breaks down and the fight doesn't go their way. So at what point do you have somebody that comes in that has a stringent set of guidelines and what they can and can't do and controls a fight, and then everybody ends up being on the same page? And it goes all the way back to, even like you said, Martin, when you come on and you say you can't hit out in the corner, you can't do this, and the refs are telling people different things. That all needs to be consistent in order to have a sports competition.
Yeah, there was one thing that I've noticed more and more frequently as the seasons have gone on. Now, I do understand that, crab walking an entire fight is not as entertaining. So to add in that show me controlled movement, I get. But at the same time, just these last two fight cards, we saw them give multiple chances to bots like Deep Six and Mammoth, where there's been other fights where if they have a big hit or get hung up, like they're in there counting, and it's like, whoa, where's the grace period here? And I think if they're going to have a rule going into a season where if you get knocked out, the person that did it is disqualified, and now you want to change that because of who's in the fight. Well, it happened 3 times. One was kind of on purpose. If you ask Jake, he might take full ownership of it because that's just how Jake Ewert is. But then you had Will Bales, who couldn't have been more sorry and apologetic about it. And then you have Endgame and Sawblaze. Well, go in and retrieve the bot, bring it into the field of play, and issue the other team a referee warning. I mean, that would solve that, in my opinion. But yes, both of you guys are right. There's a lot of inconsistencies that even the fans, minus all the production, they see it. We do. We as fans see all this, and we just really like to be able to enjoy each fight, expecting the same thing from fight to fight, instead of being left guessing like, was that different, or am I seeing things, or did they cut it to make it seem like it was different, or what's going on here? So both great points from you guys. Now the big question then, how do we think this tournament is going to play out? David, obviously, since Rusty is not in it, you're an official fan, and you see this bracket revealed. Who sticks out to you? Who's going to make a deep run, and who's probably a sleeper pick to upset a lot of people's tournament dreams?
I think a big thing for me, and I'll try to wipe my memory when I do this, but is that with the 32, it does kind of hit the reset button. So now you're going to get a mixture of different fights and different robots going against each other. So we're not going to see a rinse and repeat. I think robots to watch out for are, honestly, I think Hydra's a big one. Number 1 seed last year. If he gets the robot working again, Hydra is the ground game on Hydra. Do you see them lose the ground game? That has been so critical in just about every one of these fights, just about, and so if Hydra gets functioning properly, I think you see a deep run from Hydra. I would say a deep run from Whiplash. And honestly, a lot of the verts that are in here, Martin, I'm not just stroking this because you're in the sands of Peru, but you've you've been hitting hard this season. Mad Catter could make a deep run. Blip is another one that I think now that we're seeing them go against Valkyrie and we see a stronger bracket for them. Obviously, great ground game. The robot can move. The robot is fast, can push. The robot is tough. He's launched himself around. It'll be interesting to see how he starts weighing up, though, when he is more on the receiving end of the hits and less doling them out. Endgame, obviously, you can't. Endgame's been spectacular. You could easily see them make a deep run for the nut. Copperhead is another one. We always seem to look over Copperhead, but Copperhead has had really dominant fights. They had a slugfest with Donald Hudson. Glitch. I mean, they're fighting Witch Doctor, so I wish them luck. But Witch Doctor, another one, could make a deep run. I mean, if you saw the deep chunks that are in, I'll put up a post soon here about it, that they took out of that wedge. I mean, that robot hits. Sawblaze is another one. If Jameson, if it's not a fluke and he wins that ground game, I think Sawblaze is another robot deep run. I'd put a lot of money on Jameson and Sawblaze.
He certainly seems like a man possessed, almost Daniel Freitas-is, who is also in the tournament, playing with a real purpose this season. I mean, I love motivations just as much as the next person in competitive sports, but man, you really see it in his emotion out there that he's fighting for more than just himself and even his country. It's like his whole family. So props to him and having such a great campaign. I look at the first round and I see that each top seed could potentially have a great next round matchup. For Sawblaze, they could be facing Hypershock, and I mean, how great would that matchup be? P1 though, having a great season, so we've got to see them get past Hypershock or Hypershock get past them. Then in the third quadrant, Whiplash could be taking on Yeti or Cobalt. I mean, that's awesome.
Honestly, the more I look at this bracket, it's tough because there are a lot of robots that are functioning very well this year and are all heavy hitters. So, I mean, it is kind of anyone's game at this point, and a lot of it is going to probably come down to rock, paper, scissors matchups and, don't get stuck in the kill slots, things like that. But it could be, there's a lot of robots that it would be tough I could place bets on. Really,
and I think some of the ones that David left out. I mean, we got to talk about Hypershock, just how well that's running. I think you heard me say I think it got underranked. And another one, we went to China and saw Tantrum. There it was, Boxing King, just explode and dominate. And I'll tell you, that's a bot that we copy a lot of stuff from them, the way we hang our armor, the way we shock mount things. So that is an incredibly tough bot, and it is a new team, so it'll depend on kind of how well that can do. And you mentioned Cobalt. Matt got that robot and put it together. Again, we saw it win in China, and Matt drives the heck out of robots, so that one could also go really far.
Yeah, and a few matchups to watch out for. We could potentially get a Defender versus Whiplash, so brother versus brother matchup, if Defender wins to get into the tournament, and then I believe they both have to represent their respective quadrants in the semifinal. Also, though, we could see Blip versus Tantrum in the same regard, so not necessarily brother versus brother, but team versus former team, or however you want to spin that. So there's a few intriguing matchups that we won't get unless the stars align in a certain way deeper into the tournament. But this first round really has a lot of flavor to it. Very excited to see how it all plays out. So we cannot conclude this episode in any other way than Martin Mason himself giving us a tournament of 32 promo for what we're going to see come next week.
I'll tell you what, folks, you're going to see the field of 32. There's going to be carnage. There's going to be fire. There's going to be mayhem. There's going to be Mad Catter.
Oh,
I love it. I wish you could do that for a full 30 minutes, but I know it probably strains your voice, but thank you so much. That's what we needed for this. So you guys, David, obviously congratulations on the toy, everything going on with you, and Rusty, hopefully you're not the new Hypershock. We would love to see you with the completed bot at each season taping. Will does not need to pass that particular torch on to anybody, but
I'm not gonna put, 2022 Rusty Revenge Tour. They're not mine. That's all I gotta say. Okay.
But great regular season regardless. I'm glad you guys were able to overcome the obstacles that Vegas provided, whether it be static electricity or just the temptation of gambling and expensive food and casinos and things like that. But you guys made it out alive. Obviously, we're talking here. And then Martin, your guys' team is really an inspiration. I talked about it, I think last season or early on this one, that we see a lot of branching off of these different bot teams, which I'm okay with, but how many of the Ewert family can we have each season before it's enough? But what you do with your students and how you guys compete, I think is really something special. So thank you for you guys and Team Mad Catter, or Bad Kitty, for being as awesome as you guys are. All right, folks. Well, that will do it for this latest episode of Red Square, Blue Square. I hope you guys had as much fun as I did. And of course, make sure that you're following Rusty and Mad Catter on their respective social media channels, probably Instagram and Twitter, and then give their teams a like on Facebook. Don't forget to tune in to the start of the tournament of 32 on BattleBots next Thursday. It will be an exciting one with a couple of first-time ever win, and you're in fights to take on the 1 and the number 2 seed. And then make sure that you have liked the F.A.N show on Facebook, followed the robotics division on Twitter, and subscribed to the YouTube channel where you can see all the Red Square, Blue Square content. So for David Eaton of Rusty, for the man himself, Martin Mason of Mad Catter, I'm Richard Tiemann. This has been Red Square, Blue Square. We'll see you next time.